Hi Siri, I'm looking for a new podcast, one that preferably is hosted by a UF Hall of Famer, one that airs every weekday that would bring me everything I need to know about the Florida Gators, including news, analysis, and opinions. Siri, is there such a show?
Have you heard of Pod Up with Matthews in the morning on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, or any podcast platform?
Oh my gosh, why didn't I think of that? UF Hall of Famer Shane Matthews has a show every weekday. I'm going to go check it out tomorrow. Thanks, Siri.
Good morning. Welcome to a Wednesday edition of the program. Hot Up with Matthews in the morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. Large enough to serve you, small enough to carry. It's Wednesday. That means we have JC, then we have Mike Morgan from ESPN join us, get his thoughts on everything in college football. If you missed it last night, there were some action games. NBA took the entire night off, I saw, due to the election, I guess. I mean, why else would they do it? They get back into action today. So, Corn Dog, I know you were hunkered down in St. Johns County.
Yes, sir.
That's. I guess you're a permanent resident over there.
Well, no, I'm not permanent. I'm a dual resident, but I vote in St. Johns County. I'm registered here. Yes.
And you do that because you feel like your vote counts more over there, correct?
I feel like if you are a Republican, you have a better chance of holding St. Johns County and keeping it red than you do of turning Alachua County from blue to red. The numbers don't work in Alachua County, baby. It's basically like playing with the Vanderbilt quarterback and Vanderbilt's defense. You're not going to win anything. and I mean, if you're a Republican in Alachua County, you're God bless you, but your vote you might as well put it in a blender. And so that's
my vote was just worthless.
Well, I mean, has anything changed? So
no,
I don't.
But I mean, it is what it is. You know, I did what I could do. So
yeah. Well, listen, I applaud everybody who votes, whether you're blue or red. That's the right thing to do, of course. And you at least have a voice, and you can complain or cheer one way or the other. If you don't vote, I don't want to hear from you.
Andy says on Facebook Live, DeSantis is Georgia.
DeSantis is absolutely Georgia or Buffalo or whoever you want to. Yeah, that's right. And Charlie Crist. Well, I don't know. We're not going to talk politics, right? We're not going to talk politics. Yeah. Okay. No. So yeah, DeSantis is absolutely Georgia right now, without a question. And I think Trump could be Alabama. So I don't really know. The Trump agenda or his candidates did not fare well last night.
All right. So the last thing before we move on from our political discussion that I could care less about. Rick says, "How can you live in Alachua and vote elsewhere?"
Very simple. Because in the other county I live in, I tend to have more like-minded opinions. In Alachua County, I live there because I work there, and that's where the base of the business is.
I know. I guess he's asking how do you get to choose which county you vote in? I guess that's what he's asking.
You have to own property in the county you are registered in. So if you own property in another county, you can vote there. You can vote there. So I own property in St. John's, so we decided to move our voices to St. John's. But listen, I mean, in the state of Florida, the results are what they are. Whether you vote in Alachua or St. John's, your vote still counts. But I'm not interested in the local elections in Alachua County. I don't agree with any of them. So
yeah. All right. So JC, last night the rankings came out. Anything surprise you at all?
Well, not really, and I'm glad that TCU got number 4. I think that was deserving of that. But, I kept saying to myself as I watched the QB, what would a 12-team playoff look like again? We torture ourselves with this thinking, knowing that it's not anywhere near close to happening, but that one day it will. And when I thought about it, I said, man, how would we like seeing, maybe, 4 games followed by 4 more games on campus, or 4 games on campus followed by 4 games at a neutral site, or whatever the format would be. And I just keep thinking how much better it would become. I do think, though, that with last week's results, QB, we've got some clarity on some things. But Tennessee at 11-1 hypothetically, and Georgia at 11-1 hypothetically, and LSU at 10-2 still intrigues me, even though I know most people, including yourself, don't think that's even possible. But I think, I mean, or likely, I should say likely, it is possible. But let's see what happens this weekend. You know, Arkansas is going to play LSU at home, and that could take care of the LSU question altogether. So,
yeah, so I don't think there's any way, even if LSU were somehow on a miracle beat Georgia in the SEC championship, which I don't think is any way possible they can beat them. I mean, Georgia would have to have 5 turnovers. Oh, LSU's a great story, but LSU's not very good. I don't think Alabama's a good team this year either. So I basically have come out, and there's 7 teams that are the only people that have a chance to be in the 14 playoff. Only people, in my opinion. Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, Tennessee, Oregon, TCU, and USC.
okay.
Because, so there's only, 4 undefeated teams left in America. Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, and TCU. Right. TCU could easily lose this week. TCU's got some hard games ahead of them. They're a great story, but they've been very fortunate. They won a lot of close games.
Right.
Tennessee's not going to lose. They're going to end the season 11-1. Okay.
Right.
USC is the worst one-loss team you'll ever find. They're great on offense, but defensively they're like Vanderbilt. Okay, maybe worse than Vanderbilt on defense, but they still have to play Oregon. Oregon is going to end up probably having 1 loss all year. That's going to be the opener to the number 1 team in America. Michigan and Ohio State are going to have to play each other. One's going to lose. And then whoever loses that game does not have to play any more games. So I don't think there's any way LSU or another 2-loss team can get in. That's just my opinion.
Well, no, I understand. It's never happened before, QB, but I was listening to Heather Dinich of ESPN yesterday, and she does seem to have a pulse on this, whether you agree with her or not. The reality is that if LSU were to win the SEC championship, it would seem very unlikely to me that
they would keep him out. I do agree with that statement. However, they are not beating the Georgia Bulldogs. I'm just telling you that. No, just like I told you, Tennessee was not beating Georgia. Georgia is clearly the best team in America over everybody.
And that's why I would have zero interest whatsoever in watching them play the Oregon Ducks or even Tennessee again. But this is what we're left with because we're only at 4 teams. And college football needs to understand that people don't really care for the rematches on games that were not close to begin with. I don't know if Mike Morgan or anybody else that works for ESPN does, but I certainly don't as a viewer and a paid subscriber to ESPN. I do have no interest seeing Bo Nix run for his life against the Georgia Bulldogs. Do you?
No, I don't. Because they ain't going to change.
And let's be honest, TCU is going to play at Texas. Tough game there. They've got Baylor and someone else. That Big 12, again, is wide open.
The problem is all the other teams have multiple losses.
Well, no, they have 2. So if you
that's multiple losses.
Okay, it is in terms of the CFP playoff. TCU is the only team.
That's what I'm talking about. There's only one team in the Big 12 that has an opportunity, and that's TCU, but they have to go undefeated to get in. Real quick, I got a couple Facebook lives and texts. Rob says, Shane, totally agree with you about the atmosphere at A&M. The nicest, classiest fans I've ever met. Frankly, Jimbo doesn't deserve them. No. Agreed. No. Chris from Cottondale on the Titan Mar text line says, I know you mentioned we were in more 11 personnel at A&M. Do you think that was brought on by Zip being out, or do you think that is something we should do more the rest of the season? If so, explain why you think it gives us advantages, how it affects the running game and the passing game. We've run 11 personnel other times. We ran it more in this game than we have all year. I personally, it's my favorite formation. I do like 12 personnel, which is 1 back, 2 tight ends, because it can cause some matchup problems.
I like that too.
Georgia runs a ton of that, but their 2 tight ends are elite players. Ours aren't. And so it's a good change up, but I mean, whether Zipper is healthy or not, I prefer 11 personnel, quite honestly. So
one of Georgia's tight ends, one of Georgia's tight ends makes Brock Bowers look small. I mean, it's incredible. It's incredible.
It's Washington. He's 6'7".
I mean, it's just incredible the recruiting that he has done in the last 5 years. It's incredible. They clearly are the best because of what Kirby's done. And Florida, listen, where's this guy Frazier's been all year? QB.
He's played some. Here's this sounds terrible, but I firmly believe with Brenton Cox being kicked off the team, it helped our defense because the selfishness went away and guys played as a team. Offensively, when Shorter being out because of the hamstring, and I think he's a good player, but I think Frazier's is way more athletic.
Yeah,
and it allowed Caleb Douglas to get on the field. So we'll see.
But, Jimmy, wasn't it great watching how when things started to open up at the quarterback position, the running game flourished? And that's really what Florida does, right? That's how Florida can really expose you defensively and be effective is when they can run that football. And I think because of the efficiency that Anthony showed on that game, Florida's running game was better in this one than it has been all year, basically, to me. And granted, Texas A&M is struggling, true, but Florida still had to execute, and offensively, that was their best game.
That was clearly the best game we played all year. Chris on the Titan Mar text line from Mayaca, wherever that is. In 2007, LSU had 2 losses and won the Natty. It has happened, but not in this. Well, you're correct. I'm talking about in the new way, the 4-team playoff. I just do not see it happening. LSU would clearly have to win the national title. I mean, the SEC title.
Yes,
but I don't see how any way they can beat the Georgia Bulldogs. I've seen these teams in person. That's why I didn't think Tennessee had a chance against Georgia. Somebody wanted me to explain 11 personnel. So 11 personnel is 1 back and 1 tight end, which means you have 3 eligible wide receivers. 12 personnel is 1 back, 2 tight ends. So then you only have 2 receivers. Then you have 10 personnel, which means no tight ends are on the field. You have 4 wide receivers. That's I didn't know that personnel grouping. I didn't learn until I went to the NFL because we had names for our personnel groups here. Bandit was equivalent to 11 personnel for Spurrier. Tiger was equivalent to 10 personnel. Tech personnel was 12 personnel. So there you have it, JC. Don't go tell anybody that.
I mean, to me, it's pretty simple. The second number that tells you the number of tight ends on the field. Okay.
Yeah.
So think of it just like that. That's it. Look. I tell you, when they load the line, teams like Georgia, I just don't know how you defend that. But listen, I think you're right about Georgia, and clearly I think the rest of the country is playing for second. But you can't say that to the fans of Michigan or Ohio State. They truly
no. So in my opinion, there's only 2 teams that can beat Georgia, and it's those 2 teams you just mentioned. Because when you watch Michigan's played nobody. I get it, but I'm saying their style of play is the same style of play as what Georgia. I think Georgia's a little more explosive on offense, but now Ohio State. They got elite skill players across the board, wide receivers, quarterback, and running back. So they could cause some problems.
I don't know how it's any different than last year, QB, with Michigan. I mean, I don't know if they're better or not than they were last year.
I'm just saying those are the only 2 teams, in my opinion, that can beat the Georgia Bulldogs.
Well, that team.
And I don't think it's possible, but they're the only ones that could. Nobody else is going to beat them.
No, I mean, sure. I think, we're just going to have to see it play out, but I don't think it's as dramatic or nearly as interesting, obviously, as it has been in the past. And I agree with you. A lot of these semifinal games, we've seen it, have been awful, and the matchups have not worked out well at all.
We just got a text on the Titan Mar text line from one of our loyal listeners, Jay Bird. He says Mayaca is in Charlotte County. Appreciate that, Jay Bird. JC claims that he's great at geography. He didn't even know where that was.
Well, I can tell you where Fort Meade is. So thank God we have smart viewers of our podcast who know the locales and destinations in our great state, which thank God for Florida is all I can say right now.
Yeah. Are you in the market to buy or sell your home? Darlene Weeby, a realtor with Caldwell Banker M.M. Parish, will provide you fast, friendly, reliable service. Call her today at 352-562-1411 to help your dreams come true. Speaking with JC on the Titan MR hotline. And then we have Mike Morgan from ESPN. Jay Burr chimes in again. He says, actually, manatee. I guess
he does. Now he's
confused.
Yeah, now he's confused. Jeez,
Do you think he voted in St. Johns County?
No. I think he essentially voted in Alachua County. Look, I voted in Alachua County most of my life, but I've made a change. Yeah, things change in life. They're just.
Rob says on Facebook Live, brought to you by Mello, I've watched every TCU game this year. Rob must be a Horned Frog fan.
He's got to be.
He says the Frogs have serious elite team speed. Yes, on both sides of the ball, they do, but they've come from behind a lot. It's a great story. It's a great story.
Oh, it is. Sonny Dykes. I mean, QB, they were not even ranked in the top. I mean, they weren't even a top 25 team, had a losing record last year. And in 1 year, Sonny Dykes has gotten them undefeated on top of their conference.
Okay. So on the Titan of our text line from Chris in Mayaca, if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yeah.
He goes, Mayaca spans Manatee, Sarasota, and Charlotte counties. That guy is spreading fake news.
Well, we do not mean to offend the Mayakans, okay, that are watching our podcast. And we are thankful that we have Mayakans watching our podcast. Think about that. How many Mayakans are watching other podcasts today? So, very good. QB. TCU is a nice story, but Baylor's just as athletic as they are, okay? And Baylor's extremely athletic. Texas is going to probably beat them this weekend, so we'll be done with TCU.
All right, JC, let's switch gears a little bit. I want to talk a little NFL. Obviously, Buffalo lost at the Jets. It goes to show you on any given Sunday. But I love Josh Allen's comments after the game. He basically said, when your quarterback plays like crap, although he used another word, you're not going to win. And I agree 100% with that. But he's got an elbow issue. I don't know how serious it is, but anything else stand out to you?
Yeah, well,
that National Football League?
Yeah. You brought up that game, and I have to say it did stand out to me because the Jets brought the physicality to that game and matched Buffalo's. And I had not seen another team this season do that. But I have seen two teams now in successive weeks run the football successfully on your Buffalo Bills, and that would be Green Bay from the week before, and then the Jets. They ran the ball all day long on the Buffalo Bills. So Buffalo needs to address that. I also think, you can pretty much put a fork in anything that comes out of the NFC South. When you have a 4-5 team leading the division that can't score any points, that division is dysfunctional. And Minnesota, I think QB is a pretender. I know they beat Washington; they've got one loss. I don't see Minnesota doing much in the postseason. I could be wrong, but I'm not big on Minnesota in spite of their very gaudy record. And I will tell you a team to look out for that again defies everybody's expertise, and that's Pete Carroll's and the Seattle Seahawks. They were predicted to win 4 games, QB, 4 games. They are in charge of the NFC West. Kenneth Walker and somehow Geno Smith have just been amazing for Seattle. Defensively, they lose players like Bobby Wagner, and yet they are just as good physically. I think it's all about Pete Carroll and what a great coach he is. That has gotten my attention out in the NFC West. So Seattle is a team that surprised me, and I still think it's Kansas City and Buffalo. But right now, with Buffalo losing, they have the same amount of losses as Kansas City, so they have a head-to-head tiebreaker against the Chiefs. So it's not a given that Buffalo will have home field throughout, because one more slip-up and the Chiefs are now back in charge. So
yeah, it's amazing when you look at what Seattle has done with Geno at quarterback and how bad Russell Wilson is playing.
Yeah.
They think about everything. I don't know what they got from draft picks, but think about the money they got rid of there, and they're winning a lot of football games.
Kenneth Walker has been he's been great for them.
Yep. Mark in West Palm on the Titan Mark text line says, with Nicole approaching, any talk about the storm affecting the game or South Carolina travels to the swamp? No, hopefully I'll stay safe down there, Mark. The storm will be out of the north of the Gainesville area, I think, tomorrow evening. It's going to rain a little bit Friday, not too bad, but Saturday's supposed to be sunny and perfect. So I think we'll just get a lot of wind and rain. I think it's supposed to be like 2 to 3 inches. So shouldn't be any issues for South Carolina getting here on Friday.
That is a correct assessment. Good job.
Yeah. This is interesting. I meant to bring this up on Monday. Jeff Scott got fired at USF, only winning 4 games. So now there's word out there that maybe John Gruden or Scott Frost is a possibility at USF. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know who they need to hire. I don't think Gruden would be a good fit. I just don't see him being able to coach college kids and recruit and things of that nature. They need to somehow figure out a way to say, okay, we're going to start construction next year on an on-campus facility, and then start raising the money. Then, I mean, they need to go ahead and announce it. I know that's not the way you do it, but them playing at Raymond James is a huge mistake, in my opinion. They should be good every year, because if you get the 3 stars or the leftover, it sounds terrible, the leftovers in the state of Florida, you should have a good football team.
Dan Mullen made a living off the leftovers in the state of Mississippi. Okay, he made a living on it, and it got him another job at another bigger school. So you can do it. But South Florida is Miami, QB. It's the same thing. It's the same story. They've got nothing on campus. It's a school that's that football right now is not good at, and it's in the middle of a big city. So I don't know what South Florida's going to do. It surprises me.
Speaking of Dan was doing color analyst last night for the MAC games. Did you see that?
Who was?
Mullen was.
Oh yeah. He's a full blown ESPN guy now.
No, he wasn't. He wasn't in the studio. He was in the booth last night.
No, I know. Yeah,
that's the first time he's ever been in the booth.
Yeah. Well, I think if a football coach can't coach, at least talking about it's the next best thing. And Urban's made a pretty good career of it right now as an announcer. And here's Dan Mullen. Isn't it funny? So I mean, if you can't coach it, you might as well talk about it and get paid, right? Gene Chisholm.
Well, I mean, we paid him a lot of money to go hang out at Reynolds Plantation.
I'm sure Dan is in the deep bowels of his existence. He thanks the University of Florida for funding his beautiful lifestyle right now. So
yeah. All right, JC. Before we let you go, Timmy says on the Titan of our text line, "What hat is JC wearing?" I can't tell what that is.
This would be the
Dallas
first place Dallas Stars in the West. I'm getting into hockey. My Bruins are 1 in the East, with Tampa playing very well finally. And my Dallas Stars, this is my team in the West. So let's go Stars. Let's go Stars. So, I mean, hockey is something to look forward to when your football team's out of it. I mean, QB, I'm sitting here every morning waking up going, my God, I'm not traveling to an Alabama game in the postseason. This is like, what am I going to do with myself? I hate it. I feel like Tennessee fan. I feel like LSU fan. Like, what are we doing? What are we going to do? We're going to play Ole Miss. Great. Then we're going to play a lousy Auburn team. Wonderful. And then look forward to a bowl game.
Capital One Bowl in Orlando.
God. It's 2010 all over again, QB. In that year, they lost 3 games. They blew out Michigan State. That was kind of fun. But now players leave. They don't play in these games. Back then, Alabama had all their players. Julio Jones played in that game and so forth. Now it's like, who are we going to have? I mean, Bryce Young, if he's going pro, would he be playing in the Citrus Bowl? Pretty sure he wouldn't. Not sure why he would. So he doesn't need to show.
Is he eligible to be drafted this year?
I think it's his 3rd year, yeah. Yeah, remember, he was a freshman behind Mac Jones. Behind Mac Jones.
Speaking of quarterback play,
the
guy that I absolutely love should be up for the Heisman Trophy right now.
And that guy is Bailey Zapp. No, it's Drake May of North Carolina.
Yeah. His stats, now granted, he plays in the ACC, but his stats are blowing everybody's stats away.
Well, they really are. The thing with North Carolina, though, is schedule-wise, it looks pretty weak. And, I haven't seen Drake May play at Tennessee in front of 106,000 fans trying to figure out how to play. But you're right. I mean, he's talented. He looks good. QB, if there's any big loser out of this college football playoff scenario, it's the ACC right now. The ACC. And here's another thing I bet you didn't know. Since Notre Dame got that agreement with the ACC to play against those teams, do you realize – I thought I read this wrong. Notre Dame is 27-0 playing ACC teams. They should join the ACC. They would win it easily. They're 27-0. QB, did you know that? I mean, you didn't know that. I didn't know that. I read about it, and I couldn't believe it.
So, no, I did not know that. But I just looked up Drake May's stats. Okay, they're 8-1. They play Wake this week. I don't know if they're on the opposite side of Clemson. I still don't understand that league. So maybe maybe North Carolina's still in the mix here if they win the ACC. Listen to his stats, though, JC. He's got just rushing the football. He's run for over 500 yards, okay, with 4 touchdowns. But he's completed over 70% of his passes for 2,964 yards, 31 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions.
No. I mean, but again, they're not playing teams that would scare you in any way.
Okay, well, who the hell are the other Heisman contenders that C.J. Stroud's playing that scare you?
100% agree. I agree. And
Okay.
same with Caleb Williams. I mean, same thing, right? I mean, he struggled at Oregon State. I still cannot get over, though, the fact that Notre Dame is 27-0 against regular season ACC opponents. During the regular season against ACC opponents, 27-0, dude. That's unbelievable.
No, that is an amazing stat.
They have not lost.
Sure.
They have not lost. Stanford beat them this year. Marshall beat them this year, and they just wiped the floor with Clemson on that same field. So, again, QB, I know you don't think LSU can beat Georgia, but it's college football.
It is college football, but, I mean, I'm telling you, it'd have to be the perfect storm. Stetson would have to throw 3 interceptions. They'd have to have 4 fumbles on, like, kickoff returns. I just don't see it happening.
It was awful for them last year in the FCC game, was it not?
Well, they were playing a team that was pretty damn good, JC. I don't think LSU's that great of a team, personally. So,
right. Well,
hang on. I got corrected. Frank corrected me on the Titan Mar text line. He said Dan Mullen actually made his debut in the booth in the North Carolina State Virginia Tech game. Okay. All right. My bad. I thought last night was his debut.
Poor Dan. In a way, I almost feel sorry for him having to sit through a Virginia Tech game. I mean, that just, again, the ACC is a big loser in this playoff thing right now, currently. And if TCU does go undefeated, though, they are definitely in. We know that.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious, QB. We're talking about 2 Big Ten teams. I think Mike can clear this up for us. But right now, we are talking about 2 Big Ten teams, one of whom will not have to play in the so-called Big Ten championship game against Purdue, Iowa, or some god-awful team in the West. So.
Andy asked, what are the chances Sam Hartman of Wake Forest transfers here? I think he's out of eligibility. He's been in college for a long time.
Okay. Well, look,
right. Drake
so
May is he is legitimate. He's only like a redshirt freshman, I think. So he's got to stay in school another year, I think.
He's pretty good. He is. I'm with you, man. He's a talent. I like him a lot. I like him a lot.
Yeah. All right, JC, we'll
real
enjoy
quick,
St. John's County. We'll talk to you on Friday.
Real quick. How many touchdown passes will Jackson Dart throw this weekend against Alabama?
Maybe 1. They don't throw the football. JC. Look at their stats.
If you play Alabama,
they are a heavy run team.
You're an idiot. Well, okay, fine. But if you don't throw the ball in Alabama, I think you're making a mistake. It's clear.
But they're not a great throwing team. And if you look at Jackson Dart's stats, I mean, stats don't tell you everything, but let me see here. What time is that game? I'm gonna tell you Jackson Dart's stats real quick, since I have them right here.
Okay.
That's how I do it. He's only thrown for 1,900 yards this year.
Yeah.
14 touchdowns and 7 interceptions.
Well, keep your eye on that, but keep your eye also on the Georgia-Mississippi State game. Georgia hasn't had any tough road games either this year. So, not that that's a tough road game, but it's not like playing Vanderbilt. So, Mississippi State, Kentucky back-to-back for Georgia. We'll see. They'll probably have no problem, but we'll see.
All right. That's JC. Join us on the Titan More Hotline. We're going to take a timeout, come back, joined by ESPN's Mike Morgan. You're watching and listening. Pod with Matthews in the morning.
We want to take this moment to thank all our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills. Our premium sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Titan MRI, Gainesville's only locally owned and operated MRI facility. Meldon Law, the only official law firm partner of the Florida Gators. Peachland Dental, Gator Nation's first choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte. Comfort Temp, comfort is our business, peace of mind is our promise. QC Kinetics, live pain-free with QC Kinetics. Our gridiron sponsors are Auto ER, UF Bookstores, Celebration Point Town Center, Chris Doring Mortgage, Silverback Concrete Co., Ruse Ogra, State Farm Insurance. Doreen Wiebe, Realtor, Caldwell Banker, M.M. Parish. Our touchdown sponsors are Campus USA Credit Union, Adams Rib Company, Gator Dominoes, Celebrate Primary Care, Gator Bait Media, Okido America, Style Cuts, Ironwood Golf Course, Big Mills Cheesesteaks, MB Listing, McDonald's of Gainesville, 84 Lumber, Tropical Smoothie Cafe, Avra and Smith, Dowling Signs, Baker's Sporting Goods, Silver Cube Billiards and Sports Bar. If you are interested in promoting your business on the show, visit potupwithshane.com and click the Advertise button. Again, thank you to all the great businesses that support the show. If you like what we are doing here, make sure you follow us and support the businesses that support us.
Welcome back to the Crime Prevention Security System Studios, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Celebration points where the Gators go to celebrate. With premium brands like Bass Pro Shops, International Diamond Center, Regal Cinemas, Dave & Buster's, Nike, Wawa, The Gadget Guys, and the HBC's restaurant Spurrier's Gridiron Grill, now selling head beer, American Lager, draft in 16-ounce cans. You can get it at Spurrier's, Visors, Gator Games, and select stores across Gainesville. We'll see you at Celebration Point where the Gators go to celebrate. Going to go to the Titan Tomorrow Hotline. We're joined by Mike Morgan from ESPN. It's brought to you by Campus USA Credit Union. Good morning, Mike. How are you, bud?
Doing good, Shane. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Your frequent flyer miles are probably getting ready to rack up because basketball season started. Let everybody know you're on a call for Kentucky basketball Friday. Then you travel to Starkville for Georgia, Mississippi State.
Yeah.
When do you get to sleep, my man? Just during the week?
Shoot, I try, and even then, I struggle. My brain. Sometimes it's hard to shut it off. You know, we did our podcast yesterday, JC and Morgan, a different JC Sherbert. I always have to clarify that, I think. But we do that just about every Tuesday. And then doing shows like yours, which I love doing. It's talking ball. It's fun. I miss doing a daily talk show like I used to. So the way I look at it, Shane, that when the time is right, I'll get plenty of rest, but it ain't during this time of year. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's true. Let me ask you this before we jump into what's going on. How difficult is it while both sports are going on to prepare? I mean, because it's got to be different calling basketball because it's so fast paced. But is that difficult for you to be able to flip the switch?
The first one is always the toughest. So Friday night at Rupp Arena, which is a heck of a way to get basketball started, in front of 20,000 fans at Rupp, and they've got maybe a Final Four team this year, and there's a lot of excitement in the air, and there's a lot of storylines because that game is on TV. You know, it's not just about Cal's freshmen and all that. There's so many things that we're working on. The flooding tragedy that they had there, and a family being invited from EK, and it's just there's a lot there to unpack. And then, oh, by the way, every day I chip away at Georgia, Mississippi State. I'm watching tape. I'm breaking down rosters. I'm, crunching numbers. So yeah, this weekend will be one of the more challenging ones. And then eventually you settle in to basketball. But you're absolutely right. Calling those two sports, particularly football and radio, compared to TV on basketball, it's definitely different. And I find myself just trying to do a lot of extra prep work this week.
One last thing on that. So back to basketball, doing radio on basketball versus TV for basketball, because at least, when they say, when you do a radio game, you play-by-play guys have to paint a picture for the person driving down the road. Do you change your way of calling a basketball game, whether it's on TV or radio?
Absolutely. It's a lot less talking by me. It's a lot more setting up my analyst. It's a lot more letting the pictures describe things. And again, it's a lot more storytelling. You don't have time on your typical radio game to tell a ton of stories. So there, and you're talking about the pace. I pride myself in that I can call a fast-paced sport. That's not for everybody. But I've always had the ability. I come from a family of fast talkers, I guess. That just kind of inherently is in me. But on TV, you're not doing that. I don't have to describe every rebound. You can see it. I don't have to tell you what side of the paint Sheboy catches the ball because you can see it. So it's a little more choppier in the description.
Gotcha. All right, this past weekend, big weekend in college football. Let's start with the Gators. Mike, that's the first time I ever been to A&M. I was blown away at the facilities and just the pageantry. It was a very cool experience. But I thought the Gators played their best game of the year. Now, not taking away anything away, A&M is a bad football team. But do you think the Gators can build on this and finish the season strong?
I think it's going to come down to Saturday. Everything you said is 100% true. If you want to be 100% honest about it, A&M's down a bunch of players, and I personally think that's 5 losses in a row. They look like a team that just wants to get it over with, and you see that every now and then in the college game more than the pro game, where you got young men that are already thinking about what's my next move? Am I getting out of here? Am I in the portal? Is my football career done? Am I going into the NFL? They don't look like a team that's connected at all. And Florida certainly took advantage of that. And again, Richardson put on a show. I don't know how you let him get out of the pocket. I mean, obviously he has something to do with that, but I don't think they could have defended him any worse. I would expect the Gamecocks to do a better job of that and making him, again, beat you with pocket throws. But, when I look at Florida and South Carolina, I look at a lot of similarities in that the inconsistencies on offense and defense have been omnipresent for both these teams. So it's in the swamp. I think Florida just got a nice boost of confidence that they're favored for a reason. But it's like, I don't know if either one of these teams are good enough to blow the other out.
Yeah, good point. In Athens, the game kind of went how I thought it was going to go. I know a lot of people picked Tennessee because of the offense, but I just thought, after seeing both teams in person, I just thought Georgia was clearly the better team. Anything surprise you out of that game?
Man, I didn't expect that kind of domination. You're definitely ahead of me on that one. In that, I picked Georgia to win. When I saw that number come out of Vegas, I was like, "Whoa, that's a pretty high number against the Tennessee team that just had it rolling." And if you watch the game wasn't even as close as the score said. I mean, that was a pure 100%, whooping. And Tennessee got humbled, and Georgia reminded everybody, we're not only the defending national champs, but so much of what we lost on defense, we reloaded. And this is a better offensive team. It just is. It's just a better, the game that I'm doing, as I was looking at the numbers, if I were to ask you, Shane, or your audience, okay, who's the number one passer in the SEC? Very few people would be surprised that Will Rogers, in terms of yardage, is up there because they run an air raid offense. He throws it 50 times a game, so he's number one. If I said who's number two, I don't think many people would guess. That's right. But how many people would guess that? I mean, nobody. I don't think nobody. They'd all go with Hooker. They'd go with just other guys in this league that are very talented, but they're Stetson Bennett. I mean, the best play he had was the run. And some people still try to claim he's a game manager, and you watch him and he can make key runs. He's a great scrambler, but he throws the ball. He's very accurate. I mean, I don't know if they have great wide receivers at Georgia. They got the best tight end in the country. But he throws it on target. He makes plays. He does all those things, those intangible things that playing the position as well as you did. So they're scary good right now. They really are. I mean, I do think Mississippi State ordinarily, like, this looks like a trap game. Like, you're feeling really good about yourself after the win against Tennessee. You roll up into Starkville. It's a night game, 7:00. Cowbells will be clanging, and if you're not careful, that Mike Leach offense could have one of those nights where you're in a shootout and it's like, uh-oh. But if it's just based on pure talent and execution, I don't know if anybody beats Georgia.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think State will move the ball a little bit here and there, but the athleticism of Georgia's defense will overwhelm Leach's offense. They just don't have enough explosiveness, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. Alabama, they're pretty much out of it now. The 2-point play. Were you surprised at all watching that game when Brian Kelly decided to go for two?
I was surprised, if not shocked, at two things in that game. Brian Kelly going for two, and I'm sitting there going, wow, this is a ballsy move. This is why he took the job. He wanted to be in games like this where he had equal talent and could make these kind of calls as opposed to just getting steamrolled whenever Notre Dame played an Alabama or a Clemson in a playoff and it didn't have that kind of talent. The other one is why Nick Saban went for two the second time in the fourth quarter is baffling to me. What do you gain by going up 6? And it turns out by those two missed 2-point conversions, I mean, you put that game into overtime. They would have won it in regulation. It just goes to show you can be the best coach of all time and still make a mistake. And this is not 20/20 hindsight. I'm yelling at the TV as I'm watching that game. Like, what are you doing? Why do you go for two in that situation? I just don't understand that. So those are the two things that kind of shocked me.
The thing that surprised me the most about Alabama this year, because in the preseason, Mike, people I had talked to, they thought this could have been maybe Nick's best defense that he's had since he's been there. And I think a lot of it had to do with their front four, Will Anderson and the rest of those guys. But the few games I watched them play, they just haven't made a difference in the ball game. Has Will Anderson not played up to his standard, or is he still doing his job and we're just not noticing it?
Boy, I mean, that's a great question because you're right. He doesn't make those flash plays to the frequency that he has in the past. I mean, we're talking about a guy that a lot of people wanted to see at the top of the Heisman ballot this year. And he had enough hype coming in for a defensive player that if he puts together a 20-sack season, which he's capable of, then he might win it. But that hasn't been there. But, I mean, obviously, he's still a stud and he's going to be a top 5 pick and all that. Their bigger problems are in the secondary. I've never seen a Nick Saban secondary so often be out of position. Like on a deep shot, it seems like every time they're looking at the man and never looking at the ball, and then it's just an interference. It's just a PI. It's a PI when you don't need a PI. Sometimes there's a good PI. If you're beaten, especially in the college game, you take a PI, it's 15 yards, not a spot foul. If you're right there, and all you have to do is just turn back and look at the ball to help understand where to knock it away, knock it down. That's the kind of play that a Nick Saban cornerback makes. I mean, these guys are typically high draft picks, and they make those plays. They look lost, Shane. They just look completely lost. Their technique is off. And that has been a key part of beating Alabama this year, beating that defense. Just throw it deep downfield, and you'll either get a big play on a catch or you'll get a defensive PI because Alabama's corners have not played well.
Yeah, and the interesting about that is the head coach at Alabama is in charge of the secondary. So right. He's not – yeah, so if they're going to point a finger, got to point it at Nick Saban. Chris Storing Mortgage, they do mortgage lending right, helping home buyers throughout Gainesville and North Central Florida. Call Chris Storing Mortgage today at 352-244-0840. Mike Morgan here from ESPN, brought to you by Campus USA Credit Union. Got a couple Facebook Lives here. Toby says A&M reminds him of last year's team coached by Dan Mullen. Very similar. Andy's question for you, Mike, is what's your assessment of Miami's performance against the Noles? Boy, I saw some of that. They're a bad football team.
Yeah, that one I could see coming because I just had Miami in person against Virginia a couple weeks ago, and in a quadruple overtime game, they couldn't score a touchdown. And that's not exactly murderer's row on defense in Charlottesville. Miami's just a bad team. I mean, I can't help but think what is going through the mind of Mario Cristobal as he watches an Oregon team that he built still have a chance at the playoff and playing extremely well. And then what he has now in Coral Gables is dream job, and they're a disaster. Clearly, this is just one of those where you just grin and bear it. You take your lumps. You try to win recruiting battles, which Florida fans know all too well because those two schools go head-to-head on a lot of guys. And then you try to put your imprint on the program the way he did at Oregon. But as for right now, they're not beating anybody. I mean, they're a bad football team.
Yeah, I mean, you brought up Cristobal. I mean, he's been a head coach for many different places. But if you look at his overall record, it hadn't been great. So I don't know him. I know he's a great recruiter and he may be a great guy, but is he really a great head coach? And, because Oregon was okay last year, but not great. Now, obviously, they got a new quarterback, maybe Dan Lanning. I don't know who the offense coordinator is, but I just don't know how great a coach Cristobal really is.
No, I think that's still in doubt. Look, this was the perfect fit. This is the scary thing when a university hires the so-called perfect candidate, right? I mean, here's a guy that played on national championship teams. He's from the area, blah, 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 blah. And then he gets the job, a la Scott Frost at Nebraska. And then if it doesn't work, well, now what do you do? If you're Dan Radakovich, the athletic director, where do you turn? I mean, they went all in. Miami has been notoriously spendthrift in their athletics program until recently. And now they're spending money all over the place. And they spent a whole lot of money to get Mario Cristobal. And they made a statement like, we're now going to spend. Okay, so you got more resources. What are you going to do with them? So what this looks like a year from now, 2 years from now, that's going to be fascinating to me.
Text on the Titan Mark text line from Jonathan up in Huntsville, Alabama. He says, Mike, what are you hearing about my Auburn Tigers? Is it going to be Hugh Freeze?
Jonathan, if I knew that, buddy, I would go to Vegas right now and put in a pile of cash and get some decent odds, because I don't think anybody truly knows. I know John Cohen, and I know that one thing I know about John Cohen is that character is important to him. And we all know Hugh Freeze's background, and that's going to be a factor. But the other thing we know about Auburn is that it's never just the AD's call. And so I have to think, if they swing and miss on Lane Kiffin, that Hugh Freeze is right there. And then, the X factor is the Deion. I had a game with Cole Kublik the other night, former Auburn offensive lineman. I was saying, what do you think of Deion? And I didn't get the answer I thought I would, because I've known Cole for a while. He was actually, I would say, more than open to it. He was trying to almost sell me on why it could actually work. And I was like, Cole, really? I mean, do you really think that Deion would be a good fit at Auburn? Because I could just see a potential disaster there. It could be like a reality show. He's like, no, I think maybe it could actually work. So those are three names that everybody keeps hearing. And, if I had to put my money on, bet the triple like you would at the horse race, it would be one of those three. But I'm sure there's a candidate we're not even thinking about that's on John Cohen's radar, that's on Auburn's radar, and that might very well get the job. We're just not thinking about him.
Mm-hmm. The rankings came out last night. Anything surprise you at all?
Incredibly predictable and very inconsequential is the way I would put it. You knew that those were going to be the four. I thought that would be the order. Said so on my podcast before we did it. But does it really matter? Not, people get so bent out of shape. Look, if TCU runs the table, they're getting in. If they lose a game, they're not. I still think that Tennessee finds its way in, and Georgia finds its way in, and the winner of Michigan, Ohio State finds its way in. And then that number 4 slot is going to be the one that's always fascinating and unpredictable. A one-loss, let's say Michigan versus a one-loss TCU. I don't think Clemson has a chance with the way the ACC has been this year. So, I mean, and then the wild card that's coming out now, and I'm surprised. I'm sensing a lot of Pac-12 love. Look, the winner of UCLA, Southern Cal, they'll have an argument if they win the Pac-12 championship game. But I don't know. I'm not there yet. I think it's between those other teams before it gets to that point.
Yeah. Last thing for you, going to the ACC, and I talked to JC about it earlier. I'm a huge Drake May fan. The quarterback of North Carolina, having an unbelievable year. Have you seen him in person at all?
I haven't seen him in person, but I'll tell you what, I had a Duke game, and I did it with Mike Lennon. And Mike is a big ACC guy. and he asked me the same question. And this was a month and a half ago. And May nobody really knew much about him yet outside of Chapel Hill. And he said, Mike, I'm telling you, the best quarterback in this league is May, and it's not even close. And I was like, really? And ever since then, that kid has done nothing but play nearly perfect football. It could be a situation where he's the number one pick in the draft the next year. No, he's special. I've watched some of his games, Shane. I haven't seen him in person, but he is the real deal. They've got an NFL receiver in Downs. But I had North Carolina last year with another NFL quarterback, and they didn't look nearly as good. May is he's a different level.
Yeah, he's really good. Well, last we got one Facebook Live here, and we'll get you out of here. Zach says, is TCU's offense as good as the Vols' offense?
I don't think so, because they're doing it in the Big 12. I love the Max Duggan story. They've got good tailbacks. They've got some good players at receiver, but I would still take Tennessee's offense over TCU's based on the level of competition.
Yeah, that makes sense. Mike, have a good weekend. We'll tune in to Rupp Arena and then check you out. I love Starkville. I know a lot of people don't like it, but I think it's a cool little college town. And cowbells will be ringing, my man.
Yes, they will. Probably so will my head for about 3 days afterward, but that's all part of the fun.
No doubt about it. Appreciate it, Mike. Have a good weekend, buddy.
Okay. Thank you, Shane.
That's Mike Morgan. Join us on the Titan Number Hotline, brought to you by Campus USA Credit Union. Let's get to This Day in Sports, which is brought to you by good friends at Comfort Temp. Comfort is our business. Peace of mind is our promise. Beat the summer heat. Schedule your air conditioners tune up today, keeping you chill in the Florida heat far away. Comfort Temp Heating and Air. Call us today at 352-376-2366. This Day in Sports. In 2021, last year, 105-year-old Julia Hawkins sets the world record as the first woman and first American her age to run the 100 meters in the Louisiana Senior Olympic Games. I wonder what she ran it in. Could you imagine being 105 years old and running 100 meters in the Olympics? That's brought to you by our good friends at Comfort Temp. Hope you enjoyed today's program. Tomorrow, we're going to have Brent Beard. We should have a Baker Sporting Goods High School roundup. We're also going to have Todd Ellis, the play-by-play, the voice of the Gamecocks, join us, and Alyssa Lane. That's probably all going to be on Friday, trying to work it around their schedules. Alyssa's going to be on the sidelines for our game. She's also a South Carolina grad. So we're going to get them on the program for sure. Ruzoga State Farm Office is a team of dedicated insurance professionals ready to help life go right with the right insurance options for you and your family. Visit ogreinsurance.com. Give them a call at 352-240-1779. Let's see. Dan says all weekend games are not being delayed by weather. No, I don't think so. I don't know if anything is. Andy asks, has Gatorade reached out to you on the program where ex-Gators mentor players? No, I had dinner with the Gatorade people the other day. They didn't ask me any of that. They probably because it's kind of a weird situation with me being the radio guy. Maybe they don't want me to. So Andy says QB Justin Fields seems to be making progress. Yes, running the football. I still don't think he's a great thrower, but his athletic ability. He and Anthony are the same guy in my opinion. Good games, bad games, but will never win a game throwing the football. But the Bears have been playing much better, even though they got rid of half their team in trades. They had the Dolphins on the ropes for sure. Hope you enjoyed today's program, folks. Be safe out there. If you're down in South Florida, we'll be thinking about you, and we'll see you tomorrow. Take care.